that they've read into this, but I think that they've read over this and thought, what does this mean to me based on like what they've read in the Marx, so that gives it an open to everybody who's going to get to say a lot. You know what I mean? That's what they said.
Do you guys want to do like a quote thing? Do you want to each pick a question and talk about it? Do you want to do none of those?
I feel like I've gotten out what I needed to get out of this. But
What's that?
I feel like I got out what I needed to get out of this, but I mean, I'll participate if someone wants to do something.
And we have to make it
Has
feel
everyone,
uncomfortable.
Has everyone discussed at this point?
Say what?
Have we all discussed yet?
Does everybody?
we're not saying we're ending, just making sure everyone decides what they want to say.
That's a good hard question. Yeah. Is anybody that is sitting on any thoughts?
Last comment. I feel like I'll just end up guiding right back where we left off. But like, yeah. Just that last comment that you were saying about being so far from what we actually need, and then relating that with what Paige was saying earlier about always feeling like we need that new iPhone. Almost like there's a sort of anxiety created by all this advertising all the time, sort of like telling you you need these things and making you feel sort of less than. At least that's how I feel sometimes, especially when you can't have those things. And I'm not sure if that's sort of constructed by the images that we're just bombarded with all the time, making us feel like we are less than, like we need more to be fulfilled, when those things, we don't really need them, and maybe they aren't anything that's going to make us feel more fulfilled, because once we have them, there's just something else.
Yeah. Page 72, the more man puts into God, the less he retains in himself. The worker puts his life in the object, but now his life no longer belongs to him. And I'm looking for that. The more, I think I might have actually given you this. It's one of these quotes. That the increasing value of the world of things proceeds in direct proportion with devaluation of the world of men. Labor produces not only commodities, it produces itself in the worker as commodity, and it does so in the proportion in which it produces commodities generally. I'm not sure if that's exactly the same thing as you're saying, Todd, but something about the object of world, the world that is created by the genius of capitalism,
We have this sort of
backfires on us.
Exactly. We have this specific kind of capitalism too, that the byproduct is imagery. Like we're bombarded with a lot of imagery all the time, and all of it's telling us to buy and sell. Buy.
It's kind of like I was thinking, going off what you said, when I was reading this whole thing, I just kept on thinking, what's like human happiness? Like everybody focuses happiness on capitalism, and it's like, if we flip it upside down to like what
No, I
Marx
think
was
that's
saying.
perfect. It's so much less. It's so much less inflammatory than overthrow it.
And everybody can if we flipped it, everybody could focus on and we live this life, this like utopian life that he's saying. We could all focus on what truly makes someone happy, not thriving for the money, not thriving for those new things, but family, the life, socialism being natural, being what humans are meant to be.
Dalai Lama said something about someone asked, why do the poor people in India seem so happy? It's because they don't have to worry about buying a new iPod or about anything monetary, because everything they have, they can find. I mean, it's kind of scarce, but they find it eventually, and that just means
Yeah, literally,
the smallest thing will make them
they
happy.
were like the nicest, happiest people I'd ever encountered in my life. And the poorer they got, the nicer they were. Like it was, I mean, I don't think I'm that nice on my best day. And not like that, but seriously, they were just really, really genuine people.
Just
They
have like all,
value different things.
Yeah.
The higher I think we just become indoctrinated with capitalism to the point where we can't see any other means of creating our own happiness other than through a material means.
Well, there's a quote by John Lennon that I actually really like because it shows exactly that, which is, I think it's by John Lennon, when he says that when he was a little kid in elementary school, the teacher asked him, what do you want to be when you grow up? He said happy. The teacher said he didn't understand the question. he told the teacher she didn't understand life. But you know, that kind of like shows how, you know, when somebody asks you what you want to be, you go for this profession and this rich, you know?
Yeah, it's all your money.
Yeah, it's not anymore, I want to have a big family, I want to be happy.
And I like what you said about, I mean, I don't know, it was really profound. I don't know if you've heard it that way, but like that socialism is what we would naturally be if we weren't driven to compete with each other to take stuff and say it's mine, which Marx says you can't do anyway. Nothing is ours, you know, in that sense. But I mean, what do you think about that? That would, as a species, is our species life, are we more naturally a sharing social?
Where
species
did
rather-
the capitalism come from in the first place then? Greed?
By
Okay,
like
what did
one-
Marx say? That's a great
By one
question.
person.
I don't think that one person.
And efficiency too, right? They want, they.
Oh, yeah.
they decided to be more
I
efficient.
didn't quite start capitalism, but that started us,
A lot of it came from efficiency, right? They wanted to be more efficient. It was efficient if I grow the tomatoes and you grow the cows, and then we exchange.
It is also from the fact that there was, like, you have X amount of natural products in the world. So, and everybody wants them, only some people work for them, it creates an inequality. If you had money that you got after you worked for the money, then it could lessen the inequality because everybody works for it and they have their equal share. It just kind of got overgrown and people just kept going with it and kept needing more, even though they can't take all the money to their grave with them. That's kind of how it's.
or is it, and certainly,
that not a
you know, I mean, there are
natural progression,
there are two places where Marx talks about the history of capitalism. One is the German ideology, and the other is the Communist Manifesto, where, you know, it's, and he doesn't like to go back to a great nebulous, mythological, fictionalized past, but somebody said, hey, this is mine, and that really became significant when what was mine became ownership of the means of production. That is, if we're going to produce food, you get out there and pick the lettuce or pick the corn, and you bring it to me, because this land is mine, and here, I'll give you this for it. Or as if the genius of human beings is that we are the only species that came up with a division of labor. The one who grabbed it and said, okay, you know, I own this, you work for me, and wages were developed. You know, maybe that's an answer to, well, how did this get started? Was it natural? Was the guy who appropriated the means of production, which is the Marxist iteration of this, was he the most worthy, smart guy, or was he just the means bastard? You know, everybody else was kind of content to go along in the end.
I think he might have been just the guy who took a hold of that opportunity. It doesn't mean he has to be the smartest one, it doesn't mean he has to be the strongest one. He's just the one that at that time he thought, I should try and use you to help me, but I will get the majority share of that.
Venture capitalist.
Yeah.
Perhaps it was just the leadership position in the beginning, you know, just subtle leadership sort of thing, and it grew and grew. I mean, it probably, I assume it wasn't a sociopath that started it, but it could have been.
And then what happens, I want to make sure that you see this passage also in the German ideology, because I think it has to do with people then becoming what they do. It's a very famous passage in Marx, page 160. Well, this whole, actually, the whole big middle paragraph, the division of labor implies the contradiction between the interest of the separate individual or the individual family and the communal interest of all individuals or of intercourse with one another. And then moving on down the page, as long as a cleavage exists between the particular and the common interests, as long as activity is not voluntarily but naturally divided. Man's own deed becomes an alien power opposed to him, which enslaves him instead of being controlled by him. He is, and this is the famous passage, a hunter, a fisherman, a shepherd, a critical critic, and he must remain so if he does not want to lose his means of livelihood. While in communist society, or what his fantasy is, nobody has one exclusive sphere of activity, but each can become accomplished in any branch he wishes. Society regulates the general production and thus makes it possible for me to do one thing today and another tomorrow, to hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, rear cattle in the evening, criticize after dinner, just as I have a mind, without ever becoming hunter, fisherman, shepherd, or critic. And then, this fixation of social activity, this consolidation of what we ourselves produce into an objective power above us, throwing out of our control, thwarting our expectations, bringing to naught our calculations, is one of the chief factors in the historical development up till now. And what he's talking about is surrendering our sense of wholeness as a human being to an occupation, a job description. I don't think he really means, and then we'll talk about how expertise means that you've got to get to be something. I don't think he means you can hunt in the morning and fish in the afternoon and raise cattle in the evening. I think if you think of that more like over the course of a lifetime, which keeps extending. If you guys have life expectancies, well into the 80s by now, do you want to